Mr. Tharoor, last question, and this is not about Aadhaar. I am going to talk about your home state, Kerala, where we do know that two women have entered the shrine of Sabarimala last night or early this morning, and protests have now broken out across the state. This comes after 24 hours after 650, 1,000 women, we understand, lined the streets of Kerala to actually protest the patriarchy. Do you believe at this point the temple, the purification of the temple, like is being argued, is actually prejudicial to women, that the protests that we are seeing today are anti-women?
No, I don't think so. The problem, Faye, is that you can frame this entire issue in different perspectives and come to different conclusions. If you frame it as an issue of equality, then you will, in fact, have only one possible answer. Of course, women are equal to men in every respect and should not be denied anything men are denied. And to that degree, if you frame it as an issue of equality, there is no debate. But you can also frame it as an issue of sanctity. And when I speak of an issue of sanctity, it goes to some very, very deeply, profoundly held faiths of lots of people, including large numbers of women. It's very interesting, for example, that just south of Trivandrum is Kanyakumari, where there's the more than 1,000-year-old Kumari Amman temple from which Kanyakumari gets its name, where men are not allowed.
Mr.
Now,
Tharoor,
if men enter the sanctum sanctorum, men are not allowed in the sanctum sanctorum at all. They can go to the outer courtyard. Now, if the Supreme Court principle is actually applied and a man decides to assert his right to go into that temple, it destroys the sanctity of the Kumari Amman temple for millions of women devotees. The question is, if you frame issues as those of sanctity, then you realize religious practices have a different set of perspectives. And finally, just let me finish. Finally, the cynical exercise we have seen over Sabarimala, on the one hand by the government and the ruling party, the CPM, on the other hand by the BJP, which happens to be the government of the centre and is an opposition party in the state, has essentially taken a sacred shrine and reduced it to a stage of political theatre, with violence and vandalism and obstruction of women and the throwing of stones and the damaging of cars, and on the other hand, people having women having flak jackets and helmets put on their head to take them to a shrine. Other women, the ones who went last night, being escorted in burqas through a VIP entrance only used by police people, rather than, as worshippers are required to do, to ascend the 18 steps.
But tell me something, Mr. Tharoor, and I just...
the actual offering on the head, all of which, I'm just sorry to say, both sides are disgraceful.
Forgive me for oversimplifying the issue, perhaps, bottling it down to one of the things that was said by actually one of the ministers of Kerala, E.P. Jayarajan, who said the idea of purification of the shrine after women entered it is in contempt of court, because untouchability is against the law. Now, if you could explain to me, how is this different from not allowing Dalits into a shrine and actually purifying a shrine after a Dalit enters, or purifying a temple after a Dalit enters? Doesn't this effectively make women and the idea of women impure?
No, Faye, because in fact, on the question of Dalit entry, obviously, I stood from my youngest days against any such prohibition, not to mention the fact that the Constitution has outlawed it also. And I would agree with you that any such ritual would be unforgivable. Yet, there are temples in India and in Kerala today in the 21st century where if a non-Hindu is found to have entered, a purification ceremony is held. Similarly, there are temples where if, for example, an infant is unable to control his pee, for instance, a purification ceremony is held. There are various acharams, as they are called, that are followed as part of temple rituals in which purification ceremonies take place in temples if the basic tenets of the temple are considered violated. Now, you and I may disagree. I've written an op-ed in the Hindu some years ago saying, why shouldn't non-Hindus be allowed into Hindu temples? As far as I'm concerned, I'm proud of my faith. I'd like others to see it.
Still, but Mr. Tharoor, I disagree with you. Forgive me, and I know we're running out of time. I disagree with you, if I may, because non-Hindus, don't have the faith that it requires, that's required to enter the temple in the right frame of mind. You don't believe, and so you have, and for example, the Kerala Hindu Places of Worship Act, introduced by the Kerala government many years ago, doesn't cover non-Hindus, and I'm fine with that. It also doesn't cover diapers of babies that can't be controlled. But for a woman who was born a woman to be denied entry based on gender, a choice that she didn't make, is fundamentally discriminatory. And our constitution, like you said, which removed discrimination against Dalits, has also removed discrimination against women. So I still don't understand the difference.
No, I mean, well, you're the one, Faye, who said that it's because the people, the non-Hindus who go to a Hindu temple, don't go in a spirit of worship, and therefore you can understand the purification ceremony. What the Sabarimala advocates will tell you is that any woman who believes in the legend of Lord Ayyappa in Sabarimala would not wish to worship there until she had turned 50, because to worship there before turning 50 would be, if she is of reproductive age, would be of something that would actually violate the very principles of the deity she was worshipping. And therefore, the only women of reproductive age who would go to Sabarimala today would be women who in fact do not believe in the Ayyappa legend. That's the irony or the contradiction here. That if you believed in the Ayyappa you sought to worship, you wouldn't go until you turn 50. And I have spoken to
Do you
zillions,
believe that, Mr. Tharoor?
Okay, I'm exaggerating. I've spoken to dozens of women. Yeah, there are dozens of women who said this to me. Hindu
and should we generalize their feelings to all women?
Elsewhere, who've said to me, we will not go. I'm afraid so, because I see it around me. There have been informal public opinion surveys conducted which show over 90% rejection of the premises of the Supreme Court verdict. And I still honor the Constitution and the Supreme Court's judgment, but I think it's fitting that the Supreme Court is going to hear all these objections in open court on the 22nd. They're going to listen to all of these concerns and complaints, and they can't be unaware of the very strong visceral reactions of people throughout the state. I've had calls all day from the state when I've not been in Parliament today, and I can tell you the concerns, including of many women. And by the way, there are some women who participated in the wall, yesterday's wall, who said they are not in favor of entering Sabarimala till they turn 50. They were standing up for women's rights and against patriarchy, but not to go to the temple. And they've also been quoted in some of the news reports that have come out in the Malayalam media after the successful women's wall. So it's a much more complicated issue than people realize. And I myself didn't realize it, the extent to which we were touching and transgressing the vital feelings of people, until I met and spoke to them myself in Kerala and realized the depth of sentiment and anger that had been stirred by this judgment.
All right, Mr. Tharoor, I respect your opinion. Thank you so much for spending time with us here on Mirror Now and giving us your opinion. Very valid, objections on the Aadhaar debate and the amendment bill that has been tabled in Parliament, and of course the unrest in your home state of Kerala, specifically Trivandrum, where you represent as Member of Parliament. Many thanks for your time. Shashi Tharoor, the Member of Parliament, speaking to us.